explain about solar energy, and the video is made according to VTU syllabus. The syllabus includes introduction, construction and working of a typical photovoltaic cell, preparation of solar grade silicon by union carbide process, and the advantages and disadvantages of photovoltaic cells. Why we have to study about solar energy? The energy requirement for the world is increasing day by day. In the previous unit, we studied about fuels. A fuel is a substance which on combustion in air or oxygen gives significant amount of heat and light energy that can be used for any other purpose. Fuels are classified into two types, renewable and non-renewable sources of energy. Example for non-renewable energy sources are fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. We know that fossil fuel resources are depleting very fast and not being replenished naturally. Such fuels are called as non-renewable energy sources. So these type of energy sources won't be available for long time. Energy sources that are constantly being replenished naturally and over relatively short periods of time are called renewable energy sources. Example for renewable sources of energy are sunlight, wind energy, tidal energy, and geothermal energy. When we burn fossil fuels, it will cause different types of pollution like air pollution, water pollution, and land pollution. But solar energy does not produce any type of pollution, so it is called a clean fuel. And solar energy is a vast and free source of energy. The amount of sunlight received by Earth in 1 hour is more than enough to power the Earth for a year. 18 days of sunshine on Earth contains the same amount of energy as is stored in all of the planet's energy reserves. And solar energy is considered as a sustainable source of energy because it is a safe alternative to fossil fuels that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. Solar energy is attractive from both an economic as well as an environmental point of view. That is why we are going to study about solar energy in this unit. First, we will see what is a photovoltaic cell or solar cell. Photovoltaic cell is a semiconductor device that converts light energy into electrical energy through photovoltaic effect. The term photovoltaic derived from the Greek words photo means light and voltaic means electricity. Working of photovoltaic cell depends on photoelectric effect. The application of photovoltaic systems are like powering calculators and wristwatches to a larger systems like pumping water to power communication equipments, to supply electricity for a single home or industry, or to power the satellites. So next we will see what is photoelectric effect. Photoelectric effect discovered by French scientist Edmond Becquerel in 1839. Photoelectric effect is the emission of electrons when electromagnetic radiations like light hits a material, and the emitted electrons are called as photoelectrons. So we know that sunlight is having a dual nature, that is the particle nature and the wave nature. So the sunlight is composed of photons according to the particle nature, contain varying amounts of energy that correspond to the different wavelengths of the solar spectrum. The energy of a photon could be calculated using Planck's equation E is equal to h nu. Nu is the frequency and h is Planck's constant. We can substitute for nu mu is equal to c by lambda. So c is the velocity of light and lambda is the wavelength of light. So as the wavelength increases, energy decreases. The efficiency of the photovoltaic cell depends on the intensity of sunlight. If light falls on any metal surface, it will start emitting electrons, but the light should have a minimum frequency to emit electrons from the surface of the metal. This frequency is called as threshold frequency. So threshold frequency is defined as the minimum frequency of light which causes electrons to be emitted from a metal surface. So in the definition of photovoltaic cell, we have seen that photovoltaic cells are devices, semiconductor devices which convert light energy into electrical energy through photovoltaic effect or photoelectric effect. So we should know what is a semiconductor. So semiconductors are materials which have conductivity in between that of a conductor and an insulator. So the materials are classified generally into three types based on their conductivity. They are called as insulators, conductors, and semiconductors. So to understand how a material is conducting electricity, we should know what is valence band, what is conduction band, and what is the band gap of that material. So we will see one by one. Valence band is the energy band involving the energy levels of valence electrons. It is the highest occupied energy band. Conduction band is the lowest unoccupied band. The conduction band possesses high energy and these levels are generally empty. And what is band gap? It is the energy difference in electron volt between the top of the valence band and the bottom of the conduction band. It is the energy required to promote an electron from valence band to the conduction band. If an electron gets energy, it will move from the valence band to the conduction band. So that is how the conduction will be taking place. So you can see the images of a conductor, a semiconductor, and an insulator. It is given here. So this is a metal, that is a conductor. Here the valence band and the conduction band, it is overlapped. So the electrons can easily move from the valence band to the conduction band. So metals are good conductors. So in all the materials which are good conductors of electricity, the valence band and the conduction band are very close or they have zero band gap. But in case of an insulator, we can see that the valence band and the conduction band, it is separated. So the difference in energy between the valence band and the conduction band is too high. So the electrons cannot move from the valence band to the conduction band. So these type of materials will act as insulators. And the third type, we call it as semiconductors. Here the band gap between the valence band and the conduction band is less. It is coming in between that of a conductor and an insulator. Such materials will conduct electricity based on the conditions. Photons with energy higher than the energy band gap can stimulate the electrons to jump to conduction band to produce power in a photovoltaic device. So next we will see what are the different types of semiconductors. Semiconductors are classified into two types, intrinsic semiconductor and extrinsic semiconductor. An intrinsic type of semiconductor is made up of pure materials and these materials will start conducting electricity if you heat the material. As the material gets heated up, the electrons will get more energy to move from the valence band to the conduction band. So it will start conduction. And the second type is called as extrinsic semiconductor. Extrinsic semiconductors will start conduction if some impurities are present in the material. So in a pure semiconductor, we will be intentionally adding some impurities to introduce conduction. So the intentional addition of impurities is called as doping. So usually we will be replacing out of 10 raised to 7 atoms, if it is present, one atom will be replaced with a dopant. So how we will do doping is, we can heat the material, the semiconducting material, below its melting point. So the material become soft, and we will be passing the dopant material in the form of gaseous state into the semiconducting material. So these dopant atoms will go and occupy few places in the lattice sites of the semiconducting material. And depending upon which type of dopant atoms we are adding, extrinsic semiconductors are also again classified into two types. One is called as N-type semiconductor and the other one is called as P-type semiconductors. This diagram also showing the classification how it is. Semiconducting materials are classified into two: intrinsic semiconductor, extrinsic semiconductor. Intrinsic semiconductors are pure form of the semiconductor, example germanium and silicon. So only by heating these materials we can make these semiconducting materials as conducting materials. Extrinsic semiconductors are again classified into two types based on which type of impurities we are adding in the doping process. We can add a pentavalent impurity like phosphorus, arsenic or antimony into the semiconducting material. So this type of doping is called as N-type doping. If we are adding a trivalent impurity like gallium, boron, indium or aluminium, this type of doping is called as P-type doping. So in the next slide we will see how this doping is done and what will happen if you dope with a pentavalent impurity and a trivalent impurity. In the silicon lattice, each silicon atom is bonded with 4 neighboring silicon atoms through covalent bonding. The valence electrons present in silicon atoms are 4. So each silicon will be combining with 4 neighboring silicon atoms through covalent bonding. And if we add a pentavalent impurity like phosphorus into silicon lattice through doping process, phosphorus atom will replace few silicon atoms from its lattice and it will occupy the silicon lattice. Here it is shown a phosphorus atom is occupying the silicon lattice and the phosphorus atom is formed 4 covalent bonds with the neighboring 4 silicon atoms. Phosphorus is a pentavalent atom. It is having 5 valence electrons. So 4 electrons are utilized for the formation of covalent bond. One extra electron is also present here. This extra electron will act as charge carriers in this type of doping. So here the charge carriers are electrons. So because it's having a negative charge, we called it as N-type doping. In N-type doping, electrons are the majority carriers and holes are the minority carriers. The same way we can dope silicon atom with a trivalent impurity also. If we dope the silicon lattice with a boron atom is having only 3 electrons in the valence shell. So it will form only 3 bonds with the neighboring silicon atoms and it is not able to atom. So there it will be a hole, it will be there. So that is called as P-type doping. So in P-type doping, the holes are the majority carriers and electrons are the minority carriers. These are the two different types of doping, N-type and P-type doping. In N-type doping, electrons are the majority carriers and holes are the minority carriers. In P-type doping, holes are the majority carriers and electrons are the minority carriers. Why we are using silicon? Because silicon is the most abundant semiconductor material on earth, and we have effective extraction, purification and crystallization methods of silicon from its raw materials. And the main thing is band gap of silicon is about 1.1 electron volt at 300 Kelvin, and the optimum band gap to achieve the highest efficiency is about 1.3 electron volt. So the band gap of silicon is matching with the optimum band gap to achieve the highest efficiency also. In a silicon lattice, no free electrons to conduct electric current makes silicon crystal an insulator at absolute zero temperature, but we can convert this silicon material into a semiconductor by doping process. So because of all these reasons, we are using silicon for the preparation of photovoltaic cells. Next, we are going to see what are the components of a photovoltaic cells. To construct a photovoltaic cells, what and all it is required. Photovoltaic cells are made using silicon crystalline wafers, can be either polycrystalline or monocrystalline. Polycrystalline silicon wafers have lower efficiency and cost is also less. But monocrystalline silicon wafers are having high efficiency, that is up to 20%, and cost is also higher than polycrystalline silicon wafers. N-type silicon is acting as the emitter layer and P-type silicon is acting as the base layer in a photovoltaic cell. Due to the high refractive index of silicon, because it is having a shiny surface, the photons can be reflected from the surface. So an anti-reflective coating like silicon, nitride, silica, titanium or zinc oxide will be coated on the surface. The whole photovoltaic cell will be covered with a glass to protect it from the damage also. The electrical contact on the top of the cell is in the form of a grid pattern, and a good conductor of metal must be widely spaced so that it will allow light to fall into the solar cell. We cannot cover completely the surface of the N-type material with the electrical contact. So it will be provided in the form of grids only. The metal at the back side provide another electrical contact. A conducting wire connect the negative electrode, the load and the positive electrode in series to form a circuit. Next, what is the effect of electric field in a photovoltaic cell? The simplest solar cells have three active layers: a top junction layer made of N-type semiconductor, an absorber layer that is the PN junction, and a back junction layer that is the P-type semiconductor. The PN junction develops a built-in electric field and provides the voltage needed to drift the electrons to the N-type side and the holes to the P-type side. Electrons will flow through the external path to unite with holes, provides the current. Construction and working of photovoltaic cell. So here we are combining an N-type material with a P-type material, causes the electrons in the N-type material to diffuse to the P-type side and holes from the P-type material to diffuse to the N-type side. Movement of electrons and holes to the opposite sides, resulting in an electric field at the junction and forming the depletion region. A voltage results from the electric field formed at the junction called barrier potential. The PN junction acts as a diode allows current to flow in one direction but not the other way. So here the diagram, it is showing the construction of a photovoltaic cell. We are combining an N-type material with the P-type material. N-type material is having electrons as the majority carriers, and P-type materials are having holes as the majority carriers. When we sandwich an N-type material with the P-type material, it will form a PN junction. This PN junction will act as a diode. How it is acting as diode is, when you joining the N-type and P-type material, the electrons will start moving from the N-type side to the P-type side. And the same way, the holes will be diffusing from P-type side to the N-type side. It will create a built-in electric field. And there is, in between the N-type and P-type, there is a depletion layer it will be forming because of the movement of the negative and positive charges, and there it will develop a potential. That potential is called as barrier potential. Working principle of solar cell: when the two doped materials are joined, a PN junction is formed. An electric field develops across the PN junction by the diffusion of electrons and holes in opposite directions. When photons strike a photovoltaic cell, they may reflect off the cell, or it pass through the cell, or it can be absorbed by the semiconducting material. When the light is absorbed by the semiconductor, electron-hole pairs are created. And because of the PN junction diode, the electrons cannot move from the N-type side to the P-type side to combine with the holes. So this PN junction acts as a diode. The newly created free electrons come to the N-type side and the holes come to the P-type side. Cannot further cross the junction because of the barrier potential. The PN junction will behave like a diode, and a voltage is set up known as the photovoltage. Working of photovoltaic cell. Photons striking near the junction create electron-hole pairs which flow in the opposite direction, causing electrical current within the circuit. The electric field provides the voltage needed to flow the electrons to the N-type side and the holes to the P side. Electrons will flow through the external path to the P side to unite with holes, provides the current. How we can convert the solar energy into electricity? Photovoltaic cells in a solar panel turn sunlight into direct current electricity, that is DC current only producing. So this DC electricity can be stored in batteries to power devices that use direct current electricity. But we cannot use this direct current for other instruments that are using alternating current or AC current. So inverters are used on photovoltaic modules or in arrays to convert the DC electricity to AC electricity. The output voltage obtained from a single unit of the cell is only 0.5 volt. So they can be connected in both series and parallel to produce any required voltage and current. The first photovoltaic module was built by Bell Laboratories in 1954. A photovoltaic cell is the most basic unit of a solar array system. A photovoltaic module or solar panel consists of multiple photovoltaic cells connected in series to provide a higher voltage output. Photovoltaic modules are manufactured in standard sizes, including 36 cells or 60 cells or 72 cell modules. A photovoltaic array is a system composed of multiple photovoltaic modules. Next is the advantages of solar power. It produces clean energy. It does not make any noise while working and it does not emit harmful radiations. And solar cells does not need fossil fuels or water to produce power, and the fuel source is very vast and infinite. From solar cells, there is no emissions, no combustion or radioactive residues for disposal. And solar cells does not contribute to global warming or pollution. And the operating cost of solar cells are very less and it is high reliability it is there. And there is no moving parts in a solar cell, and because of that there is no wear and tear. And there is no need of recharging the solar cells and it will not undergo corrosion. And solar cells can be used areas where there is no electrical grids are available. So rural places and all, we can use solar energy. So many advantages are there for solar power, but still the solar energy is not so common. The reason is some disadvantages are also there. First thing is the high installation cost. So initially, the cost of buying a solar system, solar cell is very high and energy can be produced only during daytime. Night, we will not get the sunlight, so we have to store it. So for storage, battery is required and the current produced by a solar cell is DC current. So we cannot use the DC current for all instruments. So inverters are required to convert DC power to AC power. These are some disadvantages of solar energy. Next is the production of semiconductor grade silicon by union carbide process. It involves mainly 3 steps. First one is the production of metallurgical grade silicon, that is also called as carbothermic reduction of silica. In this process, we can make 98.5% pure silicon by electric arc furnace method. Here we will be taking silica and carbon in a crucible filled with, and it will be heated at high temperature. So the silicon formed in the molten state will be tapped from the bottom of the furnace. The carbon monoxide produced as a byproduct will be oxidized to carbon dioxide and released into the atmosphere. So this is the first step. Here we are heating silica and carbon at high temperature in a furnace and tapping the melted silicon and taking it outside. So this is the production of the silicon in the first step. Here we will be getting 98.5% pure silicon only. The second step is the refining of silicon. The crude silicon obtained in the first step is taken in large ladle and treated with silica and limestone or lime. The less noble elements than silica such as aluminium, calcium and magnesium are oxidized as their oxides. So in this step, we are converting all the impurities present like aluminium, calcium and magnesium in the silicon will be converted as aluminium oxide, calcium oxide or magnesium oxide, and it will be removed. This is the second step. And in the third step, there is a production of semiconductor grade silicon. From the second step, we are getting the metallurgical grade silicon is treated with tri-HCl gas at 300 degrees Celsius to form trichlorosilane, and a small amount of tetrachlorosilane also will be formed. So this mixture will be distilled and tetrachlorosilane will be passed into another chamber and the trichlorosilane will be taken to the next chamber. The tetrachlorosilane, what is formed, will be treated with hydrogen gas at 1000 degrees Celsius in a reactor to get trichlorosilane. So now we are completely converted all the silicon as trichlorosilane. The trichlorosilane is then passed through fixed bed columns containing quaternary ammonium ion exchange resin as a catalyst. So here the trichlorosilane will undergo the catalytic reaction and it will be converted as dichlorosilane and tetrachlorosilane. This mixture is also will be distilled and the tetrachlorosilane will be passed back to the previous chamber. And the dichlorosilane what is formed will be moving to the next chamber and in the next chamber again it will be treated with quaternary ammonium ion exchange resin as the catalyst and the dichlorosilane there it will be converted as silane and trichlorosilane. This mixture is also distilled and the trichlorosilane again it will be passed back to the previous chamber. The silane formed in this step, it is passed to the next chamber and silane will be undergoing the pyrolysis reaction. So silane will be heated at high temperature. It will undergo the pyrolysis and it will break down into two components. One is pure silicon and hydrogen as the byproduct. So here we will be getting more pure silicon. So all the steps involved in the production of semiconductor grade silicon is given here.